So I'm Jay Coleman. I work for Heartland Bank. I've been with Heartland, this is year five, this will be year five. And prior to Heartland, I was a product manager before, but then I worked in treasury management before as well. And when I got to Heartland, of course, we had a treasury management overall was kind of a newer concept. I think, let's see, I've been there five, so treasury management pretty much like 8 years, I want to say. Um, but you know, coming in the door, I was asking, did we have a merchant services processor, and who was the vendor for like remote deposit capture, and just want to know who all of our vendors were. And so the residual report, I asked for to see what type of revenue we were actually bringing in for merchant services, and it was pretty low, or what I consider to be pretty low. I think it may have been $1,500, maybe $2,000. And so I asked my boss, who was the director of treasury management, if I could own the merchant services process for the bank. And first of all, she looked at me like I was a little crazy. She was like, "Well, why would you do that? Because it's not making any money." But I thought that it wasn't making any money because there really wasn't a process within the bank. So the way that we used to do it was any banker, every teller, every branch manager, every commercial lender would input a referral and it would go to FiNet. But because FiNet was getting so many referrals from so many different places, there was really no process in place. So if for some reason Emily couldn't reach a client, she would reach back out to the referrer, but the referrer wouldn't reach back out to Emily. So there was just no single way of doing it. And so the first thing that I wanted to do with owning the process was I wanted all referrals, and I'm a little bit of a control person, but I wanted all merchant services referrals to come to me, and I would track the merchant services referrals, and then I would input them to send them to FiNet. So that way, if for some reason Emily couldn't reach a customer after like 2 or 3 times, she would reach out to me, and then I would reach back out to whoever referred it. Now, yes, that sounds like a lot. Like, Jay, you're doing a lot. That's a lot of touches. But what we found was that we were able to get them closed a lot quicker. And if we needed to get rid of a referral, we could also get rid of the referral quicker too. I didn't want Emily spinning her wheels trying to contact somebody 5 or 6 times. And the best way for us not to be able to do that was for me to be able to control the process. Now, that is something that's a little bit of a monster now because I get a lot of referrals. And so our COO told me we're going to have to kind of revamp our process and think of another way to do it now, or kind of enhance that process a little bit. But we went from about $1,500 to $2,000 a month in revenue, and now we're somewhere. It can vary. We're generally 8,000 on a high month, maybe 10, 11. Sometimes we have a $13,000 month. That's rare. We're trying to get there all the time. But when senior leadership saw that the thing could actually make money, now I have a goal. Didn't expect for that to happen. So now
backfired a little bit.
Yeah. Now it's part of my responsibility, and part of what I'm goaled on is merchant services revenue. So when we have a month where we miss, it's kind of heartbreaking, but everyone pays it attention. My boss gets it first. As soon as I see it pop up on my phone, I don't even look at it because I know my managers looked at it, my COO has looked at it, and they're going to ask me a billion questions as to what went wrong and why did we miss a particular goal. So I think just the ownership of the process is really good. I think that is important. I think that has really been a large part of our success. I don't think that I'm saying anything special to the customers but I own the process. I believe that. Something came up a little earlier when you were talking, Ron. You know, we are all good at treasury management here in the room, but I don't know if any of us are like merchant services experts. And so last night, someone had asked me, how are you asking about merchant services? And really all I do is pretty simple for me. I try not to get into too many details, but I ask them, are you processing merchant services currently? And they say yes or no. And if they say yes, I say, would you mind if I took a look at a couple of months of your statements just so we can kind of put together a pro forma? Most of the time, customers say yes, right? Another question that I generally ask is, in addition to that one, is, do you process merchant services? And I ask them if they process merchant services, they'll say yes. I generally ask them what kind of equipment they use or how are they accepting payments. So I kind of want to know, like, if they know what kind of equipment they're using or if they take payments online through their website. I kind of want to get a little bit of background so that when I'm getting the referral over to Emily, she kind of has an idea as to like what kind of company it is, how they accept merchant services, if they have any equipment, if they're using Clover, if they use a basic machine. I always want to give Emily some type of starting point, when she's reaching out to the customer. The other thing that I think that I found that does too is it feels like the conversation is a little more continuous and like I'm actually having a conversation with Emily about them in particular. And I think that's important too. If I ask the customer 10 questions and then Emily gets on the phone and she asks the exact same 10 questions, I feel like it's a really weird feel for the customer. And I use Emily and Mike's name a lot in conversation. So I say Emily or Mike will be giving you a call. And I always follow that phone conversation up with an email. And I always say, just a reminder, Emily and or Mike will be giving you a call, or Beth will be reaching, or Beth is going to do the demo. So I use the name, and I think for the customers, they feel like I've listened to them and they know exactly who's going to be calling them. And I found that has been very helpful as well. I call that my name dropping. I name drop.
Yeah.
So I forgot what the question was, but I just went on a tangent.
That was what's the current process?
Okay.
And how do you deal with it? I mean, and we can look around the room, and is anybody's process all that different? Does it need to be all? I mean, maybe it doesn't need to be. What it can't be sometimes as involved as what Jay has. When Jay said, "Hey, it's my ball, and then I'm going to run with it." How do we get here? I mean, we had a number of meetings. Where we sat down and we're like, okay, I need to get here. I want to get here. How do we do it? Mm-hmm. The expectations of a one branch bank aren't going to be the same as Jay's expectations. But the beauty of what we have in place at FiNet is the math is always the same.
I would say once you figure out a process, I wouldn't even. This was just kind of a self project that I wanted to do, just to see if I could move the needle and if I could help. And then of course, I didn't want to make a big deal out of it in case it all flopped, right? Like it could have went south real quick. But I say it's important, like when the residual report comes out, I look at that report and I generally sit down with my manager and we go through the report so we can see who is actually processing and who's not processing, so we know who our top processing customers are and what type of revenue they're actually bringing in. So when we look at that report, I'm looking to see what industries are bringing in the most and which are bringing in the least. When I got to Heartland, I was always told, go for all the restaurants, go for the restaurants. But of course, when you go for restaurants, they all use Toast. And then also restaurants, the tickets are small. The individual tickets are very small. And so it takes a lot more restaurants. It's harder to actually generate revenue with restaurants. What we found though is that if you were to take your car to the shop, or you were to buy 4 tires, or you were to get any work done and you use a credit card, your per ticket is going to be higher. So we just made that our focus in doctors' offices and veterinarians' offices. And it worked. So I'll say just look at the report, not only just from a revenue standpoint, but look at it and see who's actually processing. Like, what are they doing? And I would say just for us, it was just wrap some common sense around it. Like, okay, automotive it's most of the time $1,000 per ticket. So those are always helpful ones.
And that's definitely something that we can help with. Within the dashboard, one of the pieces we have is a top 10 list, and we've refreshed it a couple of times, but it's funny, the industries stay the same. And it's a combination of most open accounts, meaning those business types open more accounts than anybody else on average, and they process the most volume, and it's some of the ones that Jay just said. In particular, you look at doctors and lawyers, just because of the ticket size, and veterinary clinics, higher than a restaurant, not quite automotive, but and it's all credit card at this point.
This is real random, but I found that lawyers tend to like virtual terminal. They tend to like that, like the virtual merchant thing. Lawyers, they tend to like it. It seems to go over really well. I think part of it is the ability to invoice via email and to collect payments. And then, I think that a lot of lawyers are not seeing their clients face to face anymore. Everything is kind of like, kind of virtual or what have you. But again, that was one of our targets too. Is like, how many law offices can we get? How many veterinarians can we get?
So you got the program running the way you'd like. Obviously we're trying to work on more consistency at that
Mhm.
10 to 13,000, right?
It's a little swing.
Yeah, a little bit.
Yeah.
What do you think you could still improve on within the program?
That felt like a hardball question. I thought
Listen, I gave you that. I gave you that 3 days ago.
I thought we had an agreement that banking, the turnover is really high. And so, we'll get a group of branch managers and bankers, and they'll understand, the process. And okay, you submit the referral, you send it to Jay. Jay gets it over to Emily. Emily sends a Pegasus email. I send that email back to the referrer and say, hey, Emily's been on it. So we had a process, but with so much turnover, I think the one thing that I can improve on, and yes, my manager told me I can improve on this, is finding a more consistent way to do merchant services training within the bank. FiNet was really helpful for me the last couple of years. So in the beginning of the year, what we do is we do a series of like go-to meetings or teams meetings, they're training sessions, and they're just 30 minutes long. So the first one is what is merchant services? What is it? The second one is going through merchant services products. And then the third one is kind of a question and answer from the first two. 30 minutes, recorded, taped. Anybody can watch them later on. I think, as Ron said earlier too, like we work in community banking, so we wear like 12 or 13 different hats, and it's easy. It's easier to say, I'm going to get to that next week. I'm going to get to it next week. I promise I'm going to touch it second quarter. I think we've probably all been down that road, but I just have to put it on the calendar and say, okay, I'm the first week of the first week of the new quarter. This is going to be a training week, and just let everyone know a couple of weeks ahead of time. We're going to do a 30-minute meeting. If you can jump on the 30-minute meeting, let's run through some stuff. Another thing that I can do, and just kind of a second, I've hosted what I call quick huddles at the branches. And so when they're doing the branch meetings in the mornings, they generally invite me in to do like a quick huddle. I'll ask them, I'll ask the branch manager, what product do you think your team is going to need help with today? And they may say remote deposit capture, or maybe merchant services. And so I need to do a better job, and will do a better job at getting out and talking more merchant services during those quick huddles, and doing it face to face, having more face to face meetings. I think that's important. I think it's very impactful.
And I don't think that what you just said would be uncommon for anybody here.
Mhm.
I mean, consistent training is hard for anybody.
Oh, for sure.
It's even for us, and that's what we're supposed to be doing.
Mhm.
It is hard to get consistent training with everybody, scheduling time, doing this. Like you said, sometimes we'll get it next week.
Mhm.
In talking about the product, I've had great success with scenarios just like, even if it's hey, every Monday we do a branch managers meeting and it's remote, you call in, we do it for 15 minutes. If you want to come to the, one each meeting for the month, and we'll talk 5 minutes. First one's a little bit about this, next one's a product, and stuff like that. So there's ways that we can incorporate all of that into our program. It's why, we talked about the roles and expectations early on. And that's one of the roles that we fill, is making sure that you have and are comfortable with the amount of training opportunities that are out there. I think I'm pretty comfortable in saying I feel everybody could use additional training on merchant services. I don't think that's an unfair statement.
Does anyone else do your bankers, branch managers, tellers, commercial lenders get any type of incentive for treasury management? So do they have to, is it any type of incentive? Okay. We did not, when we started, or when I started, there was no, treasury management was not gold. They were just gold on, of course, loans and deposits and referrals for mortgage and referrals for Heartland Planning Associates, or what we call HPA, which is our investment arm. But there was no treasury management goal. And so that honestly did make it a little bit more of a challenge for us too. The last 2 years though, and especially this year, all of the branch managers actually have a treasury management goal. we went from not having an individual goal for it to now it's kind of expected that we'll get a merchant services referral. Okay. I just want to know whether we got incentive because that does kind of sway it a little bit. I think though before you get to that point, you have to kind of prove that it's worth doing it for. I guess is a good way to put it. Because I guess if there's not a goal and there's not an incentive, um, yeah, they people will probably ask what's in it for what's in it for me, and so that I think that's probably one of the things that has to be solved for first.
I was gonna give a softball and say, okay, what do you think you excel at, and what do you think we excel at?
Okay.
But those are too easy. So,
Uh-oh.
what do you think we could be doing better?
Hmm. The thing is, I had this question in advance, and I had to think long and hard. So I am used to, kind of in former lives, I worked with First Data, which is now Fiserv. When I was with U.S. Bank, I worked with Elevon, and so it's easier for me to tell you what I can appreciate better
Okay.
than what has been negative, and that's yeah. I mean, and I'm yeah. It so I like the fact that we have very specific people that we can go to for things. I use Emily and Holly and Beth a lot. They're always getting emails from me. And when I worked with other companies, I could never find anyone, or I would tell a customer to call into an 800 number, and sometimes the service wouldn't be really good, or it wouldn't get answered, and then it kind of reflects badly on the bank, where people would think, "Why are you guys even using this company when they give bad customer service?" And so I like being able to say, I'll have Dana give you a call with something, or, like I said earlier, Emily or Mike will be giving you a call. Like I like being able to use specific names because I think as a community bank, that's important. I think it's kind of goofy for me to work really hard to get a customer into the bank, and I'm treating them like their family, and then making them call an 800 number in a different country. Like that's an odd feel for me. So I think I get the things that I need. My service levels are always really good. I can always reach someone. One thing I'm running into, and I don't, this is probably more of a product, probably more in like the product space. I am running into, as that many of you all are, is I'm running into like a lot of proprietary software out there now. So I feel like every industry is using some type of industry specific software, proprietary software. Just in case, I always said I'm not going to like throw out terms and things like that. But it is a lot of times when you go to, for instance, restaurants. A lot of restaurants, especially in Columbus, they use. I'm a complete freak. I'm always looking at people's terminals and stuff when I walk into places. I'm like, oh, you use Toast or use this. So like a lot of restaurants use Toast, and so whenever I see that, I don't generally approach them because Toast has their own processor. So there's no way for us to kind of like come in and do the actual processing for them. And so I'm finding that every industry, doctor's offices, dentist offices, another one that I'm seeing real big now is like uh, uh, people who own like rental property. They use it. A lot of churches are using proprietary software now, and unfortunately, there's nothing that we could do with that. There's nothing that we can do about that. And I just wish that, again, I don't really even think that this is a FiNet thing. I think this is a overall thing where that part of it is becoming a little frustrating.
Yeah.
Where you want to be able to help a customer, that they're being charged way too much for their processing, and they realize it too. But I think that's more of an industry thing.
Yeah, it is, unfortunately. I mean, we even looked at possible solutions, and what we ended on was, okay, we can find a restaurant software or a doctor's software or a whatever software, but it's still going to be specific to the software that we chose. And we learned that lesson the hard way a while back, that we had a solution, and the customer ended up not liking it, but it was a solution we suggested. So to your point, it's not really a solvable industry solution.
Mm-hmm.
Now, what we've done to help combat that for customers, because we are the way we are and we work with you guys, is We still take a look at customer statements, even if they have proprietary software.
Mhm.
We still advise them on their rates and what we see in the statements. It's not just looking at the rate one and saying, whoa, you're 60 basis points higher than you should be. It's, why do you have this grouping of interchange categories if you have this software set up correctly? So not only are you paying too much here, but because they didn't either set you up correctly or something happened, they're essentially double dipping in fees here, in that you're paying more than you should. So we consult in that manner. And maybe we can't force the needle enough to get them to lower rate one, because if you want my software, you're going to pay what I want, but maybe it fixes the other issue and it saves the customer money that way. And at the end of the day, assuming they're a deposit customer of the bank, it's still a good PR win, because, hey, they didn't push for a sale. They knew I had a proprietary piece of equipment. They still went through everything and helped me with this. So there's little things we can do, even if it doesn't ultimately mean winning the deal.
I mentioned a little earlier about the collection of like a merchant services statements, and a tool that they use that I use a lot is once I get their statements, I send them off to Emily, and Emily puts together a pro forma for me, and so it's a like kind of a apples to apples comparison as to like where their rates currently are and what the rates would look like with us. And it's a really good breakdown. It shows you like what their monthly savings will be and what their annual savings will be. And I use that as a tool a lot. I also let the customer know too, if for some reason you get the form back and it's not a savings, then it's no harm, no foul. It's not a big deal, but it doesn't hurt to take a look at it. And so we'll actually have customers that would move to they'll move to the finish line, even if we're saving them just a little bit, because sometimes it's just a matter of them actually seeing it in black and white. You probably get the question a lot, because I do, is, well, what are your rates? If I ask about merchant services, whether they process, they want to know, well, what are the rates? And I'll always tell them, I can get you a performer, we can take a look at it, and if it makes sense, we can move forward, and if not, then we won't. It actually, the customers ask you that just to ask, but I don't think it even really matters to them, because they want to see what they're saving, right? You can tell them the rate is 8%, and that really means nothing to them. But what they want to know is, am I saving money? Because they more than likely don't know what their rates are right now anyhow, right? Which is so important for us to go ahead and get the merchant services statements. But if they see we can save $100, I mean, we've saved people, $100, $200 a month, and that's what really matters. They don't care about the rate. They want to know that they're saving some money.
Existing business customers. We've had conversations about that in the past. How does the bank look at their existing business customers as an opportunity, and is there anything specific that you guys do that may help the rest of us in maybe charting a path towards approaching those guys?
We had I used to have our analyst in our department, his name was Ethan. I call him Boy Wonder. And he was I call him a data nerd. He's really good with data. And he found a way using a SharePoint system. So this is kind of far-fetched, and maybe not everyone will be able to do this, because I wouldn't be able to do it. Ethan is just super smart. But he created this system where every branch could see all of the business accounts that are assigned to their office, and it'll give you a list of all of the customers that actually that get merchant services deposits that don't process with us. That's really sophisticated, and there's no way that I would have been able to do that had Ethan not been at the bank. Where we came up with the idea for that was just something that I used to do in my former life, is every single business customer, before I went out on a call to visit them, or every time I would do a review, I would always see if they processed merchant services and who they processed it with. And so I kind of gave Ethan that idea, and then he just found an automated way to do it.
And we can actually help in that process to a much less sophisticated manner, in that we have access to everybody's residual report, which is your customer list. So we can talk to you with that and work together with you on branch assignments, or maybe we don't need to break it out by branch, and just know that, okay, here's our 300 DDAs, here's the 75 that are processing with FiNet. We've got 225 potential customers, maybe 200, because there's some other ones in there that we don't need to talk cards to. And then we figure out how to approach them, and we're solving a couple different issues there.
Yeah, this is kind of another random one. This is a Jasonism here. So I get taken out on a lot of calls with like branch managers and commercial lenders and bankers and kind of existing customer calls as well as like prospect calls, people that we're trying to onboard to the bank. And I think one of the reasons why they like to bring me out on those calls is I think I can do a little more unpacking with things than sometimes the commercial. So commercial lenders generally go into calls and they're only concerned about the loan, or the branch manager goes into a call and they only care about the deposits. And when they take me out on a call, my spiel, and I'll give you the spiel, is I work in treasury management. Don't be afraid. Essentially, what my job is to understand your payables and receivables processes. So for the bank, I am responsible for how you bring money into the company and how you send money out of the company. To give you an example is if you direct deposit and pay to your employees, I can help you with that. If people write you checks and you need to make deposits remotely, I can help you with that. If you accept credit cards and debit cards, guess what? I can help you with that as well. And that's generally what I do. And so in having the payables and receivables conversation with the client, I'm talking about when there's the money they're sending out for loan payments. I'm talking about if they have mortgages, the things that they pay. So I think in treasury management, I'm able to comfortably uncover more things than just a commercial lender or a branch manager. And so I think often the partner that I'm going on a call with, they tend to get just as much out of the call as I do, because I'm uncovering deposits, I'm uncovering who they're paying, I'm uncovering any loans that they have out there, or future plans, commercial lending, or I'm uncovering how many employees they have. I'm like, there's a lot of unpacking that happens generally when I go on those calls, and I try to make sure that I try to demystify what treasury management is. I just do payables and receivables is pretty much what I handle. And so if you ever get nervous or intimidated about talking about just merchant services, I would say maybe shift the conversation and talk more about payables and receivables as opposed to just merchant services. Then you don't get kind of caught up in the whole rate trap and all that kind of stuff. I think if you make the conversation more broad, you'll get more out of it. But then you're not boxed into just talking about merchant services. You're trying to figure out all of the opportunities. Merchant services, just, if they tell me, hey, I need to take merchant services, I'm like, hey, would you mind if I had your statements? Just make it really broad and not box yourself in. I think, and you have to close your ears, FiNet. I think if you go in and you're only talking about merchant services, I think you're blocking yourself from other opportunities that may be out there, because you're. So yeah,
Whose idea was it to have him talk?
I think it should be really broad so you can kind of understand everything. Because then you also know what other partners to bring in on those calls, and it's more of a revenue generator, I think. Just my opinion. Yeah. My right opinion. No.
Yes. Any other questions or comments? Scenarios? Anything we
I'm gonna say
didn't?
scenario, the process,
Yeah,
things, or
something we didn't
anything.
cover.
I learned a ton from Emily last year. We so happened to sit at the same table, and just kind of uh, the ownership piece. She's really big on ownership and owning things. I felt that was impactful last year. I appreciated that. But any process questions, anything you guys may be going through or seeing, or you're probably thinking, I'll just maybe contact Jay later.
We got Chris.
Hey, Chris.
Had any issue with people that are, yeah, here's my statement, I will give you my information,
Yeah.
send it off, and then it seems like this kind of slips away. And FiNet's did a great job of notifying me, hey, follow it up. And I've gotten several emails from banks saying, hey, call them back this week, call them back this week. But in general, what is kind of your, hey, I'm going to go back in 6 months and follow up with this customer, I'm going to go back.
Yeah, it depends. That's probably not the answer you wanted, but it really does depend. Um, I as I mentioned before, I let the customer know who's going to be contacting them. I know Emily reaches out to them. When I get Emily's Pegasus email, Emily or Mike's Pegasus email saying, "Hey, I left message number one, or, I spoke to the customer. Generally, when it gets to like the second contact, when Emily's reached out the second time, when we get to that time, I'm always reaching back out to whoever referred it to me, whichever branch or banker that is, and saying, hey, do you mind reaching out to your customer? Or, like, do they come into the branch on Fridays? Can you just kind of put a bug in their ear that Emily has been trying to reach them? And so we tend to, I tend to do it that way. Some we can get turnaround really quickly, and then some, like you mentioned, it takes a really long time. Um, my approach is just to be very transparent and be kind of blunt with the customer with regards to with really all referrals, not just merchant services, but all referrals. I'm like, are you interested at this time, or is this something we can put on the back burner? So I just have to get like really direct with the questions. I just believe in.
Also making sure that the person you're talking to is in fact one making the decision.
That's a good point.
Because a
Yeah,
lot of times, like,
that's a great point. Yeah.
To, like, yes, they may have access to the treatment, but they aren't the ones who is pulling the trigger. So it's like some of those, is there anybody else in the room, or is there anybody else that should be in the room when we talk about this?
Mm-hmm.
What are your barriers to moving forward? Should you decide to?
Yeah.
Things like that.
And also like that too, and also giving out, is this something we're interested in right now, or do we want to revisit this at later on in the year, or and if I think the more direct you are, they'll tell you, this is my busy season right now. If we could wait until May, then we can approach it again. And then that way I can just remove the referral. Like I can remove the referral, and some other referrals can get the attention. But yeah. Oh, and another thing too is with the refers, whether it be our bankers, branch managers, commercial lenders, I always try to make sure that they give me, and I call it a complete referral. I'm really big on a complete referral. And so a complete referral is the contact person, is their first and last name, it is their email address, it is a quick note about what the conversation was, and a phone number, a cell phone number. And internally, I call that a complete referral. If I don't get a complete referral, I send the referral back to the referrer and ask them to and do a follow-up. And so the reason why I do that is because sometimes if I'm unsure about the referral, I will reach out to the customer first and say, hey, your banker, Timmy, at the Johnstown office told me to give you a call about merchant services. Just want to be clear. Were you talking about debit card and credit card processing online? And sometimes they say, well, no, that's not what I asked for. I wanted ACH. Well, boom, now I can eliminate that referral. And so that's kind of why I always want a couple of notes about what it was that they discussed. And if it feels a little like, okay, this is the merchant services, then I'll reach out to the customer. Sometimes I reach out to the customer for one product and it ends up being merchant services. And so I'll tell whoever referred it to me, hey, put in a merchant services referral and an ACH referral. But I said that to say with a complete referral, I have a snippet of what they talked about, but I can also follow up with the business customer via email, which I think is really important. So I'll call them, let them know, hey, this is Jay. Your banker told me to give you a call about merchant services. I'm going to follow this voice message up with a quick email to you with a little more detail. That's sometimes where I'll put like Emily or Mike's name in that email. I found that sometimes business customers really love the emails because they can answer them when they want to. Sometimes, I was in the office on Sunday and I had, probably 5 or 6 emails from business customers because on Sunday, that is the day that they have time, to answer emails, or they can answer them at 11 o'clock or at midnight or what have you. They're not always going to be good with the phone. But without a complete referral, I feel like I'm harassing the customer because I keep calling them and they are never going to answer my call because they don't answer calls or listen to voice messages until 10 o'clock or on Sunday. And so I just try to hit it from different angles. I also, if I'm calling you at 9 o'clock one day, I generally will tell the customer in voicemail, hey, I'll give you a call probably around 3 o'clock tomorrow. So I'm trying to change up when I'm calling, and I'm also going to follow up with an email. Or in the email, I'll say, if you could just send me an email back and let me know of a better day and time to give you a call. People respond to me I get a lot of responses. I think that helps us a lot too. People, I think that people, when they hear my voice, they think I'm authoritative, but they don't know I'm like this big around. But I give them different options to contact me back, and I let them know who's going to be contacting them. And I think that that's important too. Other than that, if you keep calling the same customer at 9 o'clock every morning, you're never going to reach them. So you got to change it up a little bit. Yeah.
I was curious about the process on, let's just say, you have a different client that wants like a simple swipe or just something direct like right away and they want it right now. And then you get your, like everything approved, gets pushed through, just so like I kind of know and no one's dropping the ball. Who's heading and who's kind of getting an idea of what that customer is going to need in terms of training. And do I need to be aware of that? Do I need to tell you, hey, this is what they want to do, this is what they need to be trained on? Or is that being handled when they are being onboarded and getting their actual device? Is that something that is handled from FiNet right then and there? Or is that something that I need to bring to your
Yes. So if they come to you and they say, Max, here's what I need. Put in the referral, throw it in a note, hey, customers looking for this, and they're in a hurry.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, we get it, we start doing it. From there, you'll get the Pegasus updates, but from an onboarding and a training, that's us.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, unless you have that customer that literally, you need to be here by my side while this is happening, which happens, we would still do the training, you're just literally holding their hand.
Sometimes I've gone out just to install it, just to do it. I remember a couple months ago, I actually had Beth on the phone with me because I was at a car mechanic shop hooking up the machine, taking the old one apart and hooking the new one up. But I do it sometimes just so I can so when I'm talking to the next customer, I can legitimately tell them how easy it is. That is really pretty much just plug and play. I probably honestly didn't even need Beth on the phone, but I did it because it made me feel safe, just in case I ran into an issue. But sometimes I just go out just for the experience, just to be able to do it, and so the customer can really see that it really truly is plug and play. It's good just to get you. You have to go out on the call anyhow. I have to do the call. I might as well meet the customer where they are. It makes them feel comfortable. But yeah, FiNet actually handles all that. I just go and sit there on speakerphone sometimes.
Yeah, but I mean, like I said, if you know there's a hot button, and it may not even be I need something. It's I'm mad at something. My current provider does this terrible, or I was told this, or I'm being this. That's always good information too. So when sales gets it, they don't inadvertently start with, "Hey, how's your?" Oh, well, that's the hot button that that we didn't want to talk about, or that we wanted to have a solution for. And let's start there and then back into pricing and analysis and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.